This is kind of a difficult conversation to have because the headlines coming out of Iran right now are just changing moment by moment, hour by hour. But it is something that I think needs to be talked about. Certainly, it needs to be talked about more than it's been talked about. I don't feel like I'm seeing the full story, especially after I've been following Armin Navabi's Twitter feed. And he has resources in Iran. He has connections over in the Middle East, and we're seeing video clips of the protests taking place. We're seeing the governmental forces against them. We're seeing gunfire, the loss of life. We're seeing not just a political and economic protest, but we're seeing a religious protest as well. And so I thought, well, let's just bring Armin Navabi on. I know I just recently had you on for the Secular Jihadist show. And forgive the redundancy, everybody, but I think Armin's probably one of the best people to speak about this. So thanks for being here for this conversation, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me, Seth.
In doing my research about the protest, here's kind of what I've synopsized, and I'm going to have you comment about it and correct whatever is incorrect, okay? Most of the news sources I am seeing are framing these as protest about economic conditions. The sanctions are in place by the U.S. and some other nations, and so, the cost of living is too high. People are living in poverty and in misery. They're always promised that things are going to eventually change for the better, and they never do. And so finally, the people are fed up. Now, we're going to bounce off of that here in just a second. They're protesting military actions, these quote-unquote interventions in Syria and Lebanon and elsewhere, instead of focusing on the people. The death toll, as this recording is happening, is 21, 450 plus people arrested. We're seeing these short video clips of riots in the streets. I say riots. We're seeing the burning of the Ayatollah in effigy, these posters and banners of the Ayatollah, the Supreme Leader. And yet he's being burned in effigy by the people who are supposed to consider him almost a god. We're seeing the British government encouraging what they called meaningful debate between the government and its citizens. The French government has said it's concerned, and it emphasized that the people do have a right to protest, a fundamental right. Donald Trump has called Iran citizens repressed, and he's been tweeting time for change. Iran's Security Council is blaming the Twitterverse, actually saying that a lot of these sort of hashtags that are popping out on social media about and supporting the uprisings are sourced out of Saudi Arabia. Oh, Saudi Arabia is behind the uprising. And of course, the Iran government is blaming the protesters for all the violence and taking no responsibility for any of it itself. So let's start at the beginning and talk about this. Is this an economic thing, or are we talking about a revolt against Islamic oppression?
Well, it's a mix of all of them, but at the first and second day, it was mostly focused on economic issues. And the thing is that the government always tries to pretend that they allow protests against economic issue. They want to hear people. And when those numbers grew, then more and more people started joining the protest because, there's safety in numbers. So when there were so much, and actually started in cities outside, other than the capital, which is very unusual compared to the 2009, the Green Revolution that happened in Iran. That one was very, the government really shut that down. A lot of people suffered for that. That went nowhere. And after that 2009 one, a lot of people didn't expect this to happen ever again because that was very brutal. But to a lot of people, surprised it's happening again. But the thing is, once a lot of people come join the protests, because there's safety in numbers, because there's a lot of people out there, all the other messages starts coming out as well, because then people started mentioning the fact that they're tired about the political involvement, meddling of Iran in other countries in the Middle East. They're saying why they're not focusing on the problems here at home. And then the numbers grew and grew, and then they started saying things that are even more extreme that I never thought that I would hear, because these are some of the chants that I never expected. Even in 2009, it was unthinkable for people to say some of these things, like saying death to Khamenei, saying, death to. I've seen like them burning Khomeini's images, and I've seen. It's crazy. Like, these are things that are worse than blasphemy. Like, you could even saying things against God and Islam is more tolerated than you saying death to Khamenei himself. For many people, this is unthinkable. But the thing is that the government wants to keep focusing as if all the complaints are about the economic issues, and not regarding the government, not regarding the religious establishment. But if you actually listen to the chants, there's a mix of everything. A lot of people are complaining about the high prices, because they thought the sanctions that were removed from Iran, it's going to bring a lot of prosperity, trade to Iran. But a lot of Iranians think that any advantages that they got from that, they seem to think that it was used for Iran's influence in the Middle East rather than its own people. But some of the people seem to think that these things are not separate. When they have problem with the religious establishment, when they complain about the religious establishment, they also think that the religious establishment is the reason why they have the economic issues. Their religious agenda, their political agenda is different from actually helping the people. And that's why they're suffering these economic losses. That's why people are suffering. So they don't really see that as two separate things. They see it as the same problem. Some of the chants that you hear from people say it's completely based on religion. You can hear them mocking religious ideology. That you can hear them saying that these people care about Hussein rather than their own people. And actually, one of the very interesting chants that they have is, there's the slogan of the country. The official slogan of the country is "Istiqlal, Azadi, Jamhuriya, Azadi," which means independence, freedom, and Islamic Republic. And people in the street now are saying the chant "Istiqlal, Azadi, Jamhuriya, Irani," which means independence, freedom, and Iranian Republic. So they're replacing the word Islamic with the word Iranian, right? So this is the message that this is not the Iranian people. They want the government to stop focusing about its Islamic agenda, its Islamic ideology, spreading Shiism in the Middle East, and focus on its own people.
You can't really separate the religion and the politics, can you? Because so many of the political actions and decisions are based in their interpretation of Islam. They're doing it for the sake of Allah, right?
Right. Just to be clear, like nobody can speak for all these people. Like nobody can, when people are asking what do these people want, you're gonna get different answers from different people. The only thing that seems to be uniting all of them is their hatred for this government, right? And also, to your point, that is very true. In fact, when I was growing up in Iran, at the later age, this whole idea of politics and religion being separate was introduced to me, and it was weird that even people even consider these things to be separate, because I didn't, for me, it was interesting that, other countries, these are not the same thing. Like religion is politics, politics is religion. How could there, the government of Iran is ruling Iran based on a religious excuse, right? They are God's representative on earth, and that's why they are supposed to be ruling. So that's to say that is it political or is it religious? For a lot of people, that doesn't make any sense. Another very interesting thing about these protests compared to the 2009 protests is that the 2009 protest had a lot of leaders, like it had reformist leaders against the hardliners, right? But this time is not. This movement seems to be very spontaneous. It's leaderless. The government is trying to say that the leaders of this are foreign agents and United States and Israel and Saudi Arabia. but it seemed to just happen out of nowhere. And some people are trying to gain leadership over it, but the people in Iran don't want their leadership. I could go into that. But the interesting thing is that if you listen to a lot of chants, they actually are grouping the reformists and the hardliners together in the same group. Right? Some of the chants are saying, reformists, hardliners, your time is up. Because the way that the Iranian people were fighting against the hardliners were usually voting for the reformists, like Khatami won, and then they voted for Rouhani. Rouhani is a reformist that they were trying to vote for these people against the hardliners. But now they're tired. They have given up of the reformists, especially ever since Rouhani got elected. The changes that they were waiting for didn't happen, and some people even suggest that a lot of the changes that he made was in favor of the hardliners. That's debatable. But some of the most simple promises that he made were never happened. Some of the most easiest things that he could do never happened. So a lot of people suggest that this whole reformist thing is basically a false hope that is given to the people just so that they're quiet, so that they don't come out in the streets. But they think this whole thing is a lie, and they were all basically in it together. And I was shocked to even hear a lot of people are chanting "Death to Rouhani." Rouhani is a reformist, so they saying "Death to Khamenei," which takes a lot of balls to say, but because people are saying "Death to Khamenei" on camera, right? Like after these protests are over, these evidence is out there. Like once the government comes and starts to shut this down, if it's all gets quiet and everything, now they're going to go through all these videos and going to go find these people, right?
Yeah. Now, do you agree with that? Do you think these sort of promises of reform are just lip service to control the people? Oh, yeah, the good's coming, change is coming, we're going to reform, everybody just be patient. It's their way of just pacifying the unrest?
Well, it really does seem like it. I mean, it's really hard to actually guess people's motivations because you're not really in their head, right? So I can't really speak for what the agenda of Rouhani is. But everything seems to suggest that nothing, like these people are just come and just make promises, and as soon as they get elected, even the most simple, like what there were so many promises they made, and one of the most simple promises is that they're going to have a female minister, and that they couldn't even do that, even though Ahmadinejad managed to do that. So some of the most, Rouhani promised that they're never going to, silence the social media. They're going to allow people to speak their minds on social media. And after this protest happened, they started shutting down the internet. They started shutting down the Telegram, which is an app that they use for people in Iran to communicate. Because it's a very good. It's better than Facebook and Twitter because it's double encrypted or something like that, so it's hard to figure out who's spreading the information.
Well, let me stop you right there for just a second if I can, Armin. I mean, are they still managing to get some of these videos out? I've seen you've been posting. It's like you don't sleep, man, or you've got a staff of people that's helping you. But, I mean, all minute-by-minute coverage, I'm seeing these video clips come out of the riots and the protest and the gunfire. They're pulling dead bodies out of the streets. So, I mean, is the word still getting out? Or are they starting to really clamp down?
Yeah, I mean, it keeps going. It's in and out. They shut it down, they let it out, and let it open again. They shut it down again, and then people find a way. People, when they close the. Sometimes they're not able to do it on their phone services. They need Wi-Fi to do it, so they just need to make the recordings, and then they go home to send it. So it's not as fast as it used to be. But so
even if they don't stream it live, they're still getting recordings. They're still documenting on their phones and whatever. And they're going to try as best they can to find a way to get the information out somewhere.
Exactly. And actually more people have access to smartphones now compared to 2009. So it's more information is getting out compared to 2009 as well. So this is another difference.
There's an amazing video that's, there have been memes made of it so far of the woman. She's standing on some kind of platform. She's taken off the hijab and she is waving it like a flag of defiance in the face of sort of these governmental forces. And, she's one of those people that she's on record, standing up against the government. I mean, if the government does manage to sort of squash this, has she sentenced herself to death? I mean, has she put herself out there to that extent?
I don't think I don't think death for her. There's going to be a lot of people dying when the people, especially that said death to Khamenei. A lot of people in the street so far. 21 people is the latest number that have been shot and killed in the streets. For her, she's been arrested. I don't know what they're going to do. Honestly, the thing is that these things are not predictable. A lot of people they think there's a standard, rule for what they do. But honestly, you have laws. And then you have Khamenei, which is God representative on earth.
Oh, so she's at the mercy of whoever happens to hand down the ruling.
Yeah, I mean, if the laws don't apply to Khamenei and his people, right? They could do whatever they want if they want to, right? So, and this was frustrating to me because a lot of people were posting the news out that the hijab is not illegal in Iran anymore. But that was, first of all, that's not true. That's the news that came out of Tehran police was, first of all, not about people without hijab. It was about people with bad hijab, right? And also, he didn't say they're not going to be arrested. He said they're not going to go to jail. They're going to go to mandatory classes to teach them about Islamic norms. And also, whatever they put on paper, that's just on paper. They get to do whatever they want. I mean, even before he said that, when I was in Iran, I remember that nobody checked what's on paper to who to arrest and not to arrest, right? The number of people they arrested, who they arrested, for what reason, it really depended on the political climate at the time or the agenda of that specific officer or his mood on that specific day. Like these things. So, I mean, in Iran, it's the law that you're not supposed to discriminate against Sunnis or against the Baha'i people, but that's the law in Iran. But everybody knows the government discriminated against Baha'is and Sunnis.
I want to camp out here on the issue of women. I know that much, and I don't see much of this reported yet. It's been I saw a line or two about it on CNN. How much of this uprising do you think has to do with this sort of repression, suppression of women's rights? They've been covering them up, treating them like second-class citizens, and they're tired of it, and they want liberation. How much of that has to do with the women saying, we've had enough of this government's treatment of women?
A lot. And actually, if you see a lot of the protests, a lot of the protesters are women, and not only they're participating, a lot of them are leading and inspiring the other protesters, right? You can see when the men, when they see women standing in front, like I saw one video, this lady was sitting in front of the road just by herself, alone, just went and sat down in front because the Basiji members, the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard members were coming, and she just sat there just to block them. And all the people saw her sitting, and they started sitting behind her. And then, hundreds of people started sitting behind her. And, when they go out and when they are, they call them lionesses, right? And when they speak out with such passion, you see a whole bunch of people behind them get inspired and follow her. And the thing is, it's not just about the hijab. It's not just about the forced, veiling. The veil is a symbol for every other oppression of the government on the people, right? So it's not, when they take off their hijab, it's not just about that I get to wear what I want, you don't get to tell me to put a hijab on. It's about everything. It's about, you don't get to tell me that I'm inferior for being a woman. You don't get to tell me that I have less rights because I'm a woman.
I know it was in, I think, Saudi Arabia, certainly other countries. I don't know if Iran qualifies, but like even in a court of law, when there would be one male witness against or about a crime, he required two females to have the equivalent of one male. In the courts of law, it's just that kind of thinking. These men running the game, and the women are tired of it. There used to be, I don't know if there still is, a photograph of your own mother, wasn't there? And what she looked like back in the 1970s before sort of this theocracy took over, and then what she looked like afterwards. You want to kind of describe, she was a professional, she was engaged in the culture, she was her own person, and then what?
Yeah, and I remember actually when Khomeini was coming to Iran, when he was coming down the plane, it was on TV and people were watching it. And she was a nurse. And, a lot of people didn't think that the mullahs will completely hijack the revolution, but all the nurses were watching the TV. And when Khomeini was coming down the plane, she said something to the effect of, "We're fucked," right? And everybody looked at her. And the next day when she came back to the hospital, they had a huge banner, and on top of it they had wrote, "The Horrors of the West," and there were a whole bunch of names under it, and one of the names was her name under it. But yeah, I mean, when the hijab was forced on the woman, there was more than 100,000 women that came out and protested. This is right now the mandatory veiling. This is something that was wiped out from our history.
Is it still mandatory though in Iran right now? Is it mandatory for the woman to be veiled?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. It's actually, I think now it's the only country where it's mandatory even for foreign women.
I saw this a viral video on YouTube or somewhere where there was an older woman who was veiled, and then there was a younger woman who was not, in a Middle Eastern country. And the older woman goes up and says, "You are shaming us. You are tempting the men. You're making women look bad."
That was Iran. Yeah, that's Iran. Yeah, I mean, by the way, that lady that came out and her picture of her holding that and protesting that, she's now become a symbol. And I think nobody has still figured out who she is or where she is right now. We know she was arrested, but nobody even knows her name. Unless, I mean, I've been looking. People say they don't know her name, but they're, another thing is that a lot of people keep on accusing the government, especially, is putting this narrative out there that these people are being led to these by foreigners, by Americans, by Jewish people, by Saudi Arabia. Khamenei just posted something on Twitter. He said that all the enemies of Iran have gotten together, and now this is what it has come to. And it's so sad, this is always the line that they go to. And, basically they're telling the people of Iran that you have no agency. Whenever you have a problem with the government, it's not you that is saying this. It's basically the Americans that are telling you this, the Israelis that are telling you this.
What do we do, man? I mean, here we are halfway around the world, and we're like, this is the question I continue to see and hear. How do we lend aid? How do we support? What can we do? I mean, they're kind of a microcosm. Certainly international pressures come into play, but as individuals, man, is there anything that you and I can be doing over here?
Well, I mean, I've been trying to get as many of these voices out as possible. I mean, you're doing this. This is really amazing. I can try to, I've been translating the videos for people so that, a lot of people there get encouraged to see. At first, the first 2 days, there was no coverage, zero coverage on this, right? CNN, BBC, and people were like, why is nobody talking about this? And I was taking the protest, I was translating it, I was tweeting it, and a whole bunch of other people were doing the same thing. And it was going viral because other people that were interested in it weren't getting it from news outlets. Now there seems to be some interest in it. The problem is a lot of the reporters that these foreign news organizations have in Iran are government-approved reporters. So so if any of the people want to get the real news out, they have to find people on the ground. I found a few people that are sending me reports, and they're sending me audio messages that I'm translating and putting it on my Twitter account. What you're doing is amazing. If you want, if I find somebody that is willing to talk, I'll try to get them from Iran. I'll try to get them in touch with you as well.
I'm in. Whatever we can do. Honestly, the word historic sounds rather trite, but the other challenge that I have, and I know you feel the same, is I have this overwhelming sense of dread, because we know what so often happens. The uprising takes place, they shut down the centers of media, and then they slaughter their own citizens and mop everything up in secret, and nothing ever changes. I'm reminded of back in the protest in China, the man standing in front of the tank, putting himself out there, and then all of a sudden, we were blocked off as its own citizens were slaughtered in Tiananmen Square. And I think to myself, does this have a chance of affecting positive change? Do they have a chance of success? And the only answer I can come up with, unless you've got a better one, is we have to do what we can to give them every chance. I don't know. What do you think, man?
Well, I think the more attention you bring to this, it does help, because Iran does lose legitimacy to complain about other things, because Iran always claims that the people of Iran are backing the government, right? The people of Iran are behind it. The people of Iran want this. The people of Iran want this. And when we bring attention to the fact that you don't have the support of your own people, they lose international legitimacy, right? They lose their legitimacy when they complain about Saudi Arabia, when they complain about United States. And they don't want that. They don't want that. So it does hurt them. It does hurt their standing. It does hurt them when they have to spend so much resources shutting their own people. It does hurt their cause. It does hurt their spread in the Middle East. I don't really know what the outcome of this is going to be. The government does have all the guns, does have all the military. I mean, the people in Iran, they don't have. I mean, they still haven't shown the full force that they can, because they don't want to go all out. They're waiting it out a little bit, but they can, and if it gets bigger, they might, right?
Yeah.
These are the Iran's government effectively won many battles against ISIS, right? And ISIS had guns and trucks and many weapons. These people don't have that, right? So if Iran wanted to, these people, I mean, I here to be pessimistic. I don't really know how. I do know that this is going to be a heavy financial cost for the government. It's going to be a heavy political cost for the government in Iran internationally. I do hope that even if this doesn't lead into a major shift in the government, it does seem to have scared them a lot. There does seem to have been some leaks of report. I don't know how reliable these leaks are, but it does seem some leaks does seem to suggest that even some of the highest up in the government are a little bit, terrified of this, right?
Do you think there's a merit beyond sanctions? Do you think other nations should perhaps get involved militarily, or is that just a?
The thing is, I don't think if you ask the people on the ground, you get mixed responses. Most of them, it seems to be that they don't want the help of Trump, right? Because they don't think that he's on their side, especially because of the sanctions and because of the ban on Iranians to get visa.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that you bring that up, right? Wasn't Iran part of the travel ban that's been denied by the federal court 3 different times in the year 2017? And now to see Trump come forward as a champion of the Iranian people is a bit of an irony to me.
Right. It does. They don't. A lot of people don't buy it, and a lot of people think that this is just more of an anti-Obama stance rather than a pro-Iranian stance. Because, and again, I'm not saying everybody says that, but these are some of the messages that I'm getting. Because Obama didn't support the Green Revolution, right? Even though many people were asking for it at the time. In fact, he did a lot. Maybe some reports, again, I don't know how reliable this is. Some reports suggest that he even tried to, made sure that he even shut down some of the support from Iran on it, because he was worried about the deals that he had with Iran. So, a lot of people point out that Obama betrayed the Iranian people, but now Trump pointed out to that, and Trump is saying, I'm not going to do the same thing. But people think that this is more a political anti-Obama thing rather than a pro-Iranian thing, especially given that the stances that he had previously on Iran. You say, how could you be pro-Iranian people if you ban us from even coming to your country, people that might need protection from their government, right? Or how could you, some of them say a lot of this economic cost that we're having is because of the U.S. sanctions on Iran. So they don't buy that. And another thing is, a lot of people seem to suggest that U.S. support for protesters hurt their cause, right? Because the Iranian government keeps on trying to show that this is a Israeli-backed protest, an American-backed protest, a Saudi-backed protests. And when they come out and say this, some people say that this might hurt their cause. Again, I know there's going to be some Iranians that disagree and they're going to know we need the support, but there's also a lot of people that think, I mean, even on I think it was on the third day, the government, when they were talking about the protests in Iran, from the very beginning, they started pointing out how happy Trump is, how happy Saudi Arabia is, because they know that their own people don't like Trump. They know that Iranians don't like Saudi Arabia. So basically, they kept on showing to people like, look, you're making Trump happy. Look, you're making Saudi Arabia happy. Is this what you wanted? I
would like it on the record. I am not a puppet of the Iranian government, nor am I working under their influence. I'm not. I know there are going to be people who, no matter what you do, are going to criticize. But I was looking at an exchange about this online. They were like, well, what do you think? What do you think? And I just come back to, this is a human rights issue. I mean, these are human beings under the boot of oppression, theocratic oppression, however you want to frame it. They're under the boot of oppression, screaming to be liberated, to be free. What can we do to support them? And I think that the media that you've released on your page has been probably the most instrumental feed for me in learning about and seeing what's happening in Iran. For that reason, I'm going to make sure that I include the link to your Twitter account. You just doing mostly Twitter these days? Is any of it on Facebook?
I'm personally focusing on Twitter.
Okay.
I told my team to check my personal Twitter account and post it on Atheist Republic. Everything that they think is because I don't want Atheist Republic to be my voice. So I tell them, look, the ones that you think is relevant to religion, just take those, and Islam. So my team is looking at my Twitter feed and posting it on Atheist Republic, the parts that they think.
Would they find that out? Would they go to atheistrepublic.com for those, or just the Atheist Republic Twitter feed to see those?
Atheist Republic Facebook page and my personal Twitter feed. And also, if anybody from Iran has any messages that they want to leave on atheistrepublic.com, there's a green record button. If you record your voices there, and any other atheist or anybody in the world that want to leave a message for us, there's a green record button that goes to our podcast. If they leave it in this green record button usually was for the Atheist Republic podcast, but I'm going to use it for this as well. So if anybody leaves a Persian message, if you leave it in English, great. If you leave it in Persian, I'll personally translate it with an audio right after your message, and I'll try to get your voices out there. So that's on atheistrepublic.com. Go click the green button and leave a voicemail, and we'll broadcast.
This is what I mean about Armin Navabi, who he just never sleeps. You don't sleep. I don't know. Whatever your secret is, but it's obviously this being your home country and a human rights issue, and it speaks to so many things you're passionate about. It's obvious this matters to you and a great many people. So I'm going to include links to all those Twitter feeds, the websites, everything in the description box. Go watch these clips. Go and see the narrative hour by hour as things are unfolding. As the data has changed even in the days after the release of this conversation, stay involved. And if you are at a place where you have a bird's eye view or a street level view of what is happening and you can find a way, get the news out, contact Armin's Twitter page, get this footage, to the public eye in some way, and we'll do our best to try to make sure that the world is educated about it. Fair enough?
Yeah, thank you so much, Steph. You're amazing.
Armin Navabi, he is the host of atheistrepublic.com. I'll include that link and all the Twitter links, everything relevant in the description box. You're a good man. You're doing great work. Armin Navabi, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Steph. Thank you so much for having me.